All right, so welcome to the first ever PerfGuild meetup. It is the first meetup I've done. I have done online conferences before, full day events, but this is the first time just doing a meetup. So I'm sure the format's going to change. If you're new to PerfGuild or Guild conferences, what we like to do is we like to call this attendee-led events. So this is the first one, but this isn't necessarily how the format will always be. It's going to be based on your feedback. So if you're like, Joe, I don't like this format, let's try something else. I'll try it if enough people say so, but that's what I'll do. And so just a few things you need to know up front. I did a survey, and so I was kind of surprised by the survey results. Hey, Gonzala. Hey, Anal. Hey, Martin. So people are joining. So as I was saying, I sent out a survey, and based on those results, I gave them an option for day and time. And surprisingly, most people wanted Fridays at 3 p.m. So going forward, we'll have a weekly meetup. That's going to be every Friday, but it's either going to be at 10 a.m. or 3 p.m. because the second most popular option was 10 a.m. So it just depends on our speaker, when we can get a speaker there, either at 10 a.m. or 3 p.m. Eastern time. Hey, Casey. Hey, Bossy. Awesome. I can't believe we have this many people joining the first time. I need to find a way to pull people in as well. So if people really want to be on camera and talk as well, I like to do that. So hopefully you're all doing well. I know it's a crazy time for everyone. Probably a lot of you are working from home and maybe it's a new experience for you. If you're an introvert, maybe it's not so much of a problem like I'm an introvert, but if you're an extrovert, these type of things is really essential for us to all to get together, I think, and just maybe blow off some steam. And what better person to blow off steam with than with Leandro Melendez? And Leandro has a lot to say around performance. So let's just get right into it. And let's bring Leandro in.
Hello, Joe.
Hey, Leandro. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody that is watching us. I'm very glad and a little bit scared of hearing about the numbers that we're getting.
No, it's great numbers. So I want to thank you. This is a really cool topic. It's something that a lot of people actually seem to stumble on, confusing performance testing with load testing. And as folks know, you are a performance testing expert. So after Leandro does his rant, any type of performance issue you may have, a question, I'm sure he can handle. So let's just jump right into it. Hey, Noel.
Okay.
Just hi to Noel, who's from Smart Bear. Cool. All right. Sorry. Go ahead, Leandro. All yours.
No worries. Perfectly fine. As well, before everything, I begin with all this rant and this talk that I'm going to be doing. First of all, I want to thank you, Joe, for inviting me and letting me be part of these experiments. As this is the second time that I am to be the guinea pig on one of your shows, or
That's right.
Try to do some of these experiments, and especially now that we're from home and starting to share as much and to build a community from a distance. But warning, this is also like experiment for me. It was a first time that I tried, and as being the guinea pig, I had some issues. So all that I had prepared for you to explain with these cute hamster and images, I won't be able to do it fully, the whole presentation that I thought that I wanted to talk, but I'll try to go as far as possible. Again, after that little apology, again, I want to thank you, Joe. I love it that you always give me the opportunity to head spear on all of these experiments and new things that are being done. And thank you again, everyone that is joining, and thank you for the awesome, huge numbers that we're having. So first of all, I am, as you can tell, I'm Senor Performo, Leandro Melendez, aka Senor Performo, better said. For the ones that do not know it, I started as a blogger. I'm starting to generate as much content as possible regarding performance testing, and agile. And as well, I'm an employee manager of an area of performance testing at Qualitas Group. We provide services around performance testing and applying some of the best practices that I'm going to be talking about and ranting about here. As well, I'm a happy member of the PerfGuild family, part of the PerfGuild shows. Specifically, I often contribute to many of the shows. I try to sneak in on Ask PerfGuild, regular PerfGuild, News of the Dan, all of the shows that we have. But mostly I'm the host of PerfGuild Español, where I try to explain and teach in Spanish some of the topics that I'm going to be talking about today. As well, and all of that, I'm a public speaker. I try to stand in front of people and explain all of these things as much as possible. I have been lucky enough to be accepted in multiple venues to do this public speaking, and have been here and there. So to start up, I want to talk to you about an interesting topic, something that has caught my attention, has been like a crusade, a mission for me, and that has been something that I have been talking about quite often, and many of the presentations, the podcasts, and all that I can. And it's also an opportunity to generate some communication, some conversations, some questions and answers that we will be doing today here. And well, as it was mentioned, it's more or less like a rant, something that I'm going to be trying to correct or complain about this confusion and miscommunication that I have been going through for a while. Today, I will try to explain to you and make sure that you understand the differences in between performance testing and load testing, which often are taken and confused as the same thing. They at times are understandably being taken as synonyms, performance and load testing. So, of course, they are not the same. They are pieces and parts that I'm going to be talking about. They are pieces that compromise or make together a larger whole, which performance testing is the larger whole and load testing is a piece of it. So I'm going to talk in the first place about performance testing, which is the second tier, and you would say second tier, second level. I'll go a little bit further into that in a bit. But let's start with the term performance testing. Let's start giving some definitions, giving some descriptions of what is each of them. I'm going to textually, and my funny images already died, and that's the bug that I mentioned that I could not correct before this presentation. But from now on, you'll have only this boring background. If you want, I could bring some of the funny images later.
Hey, Leandro,
full of them.
How bad would it be if I interrupt every now and then? Do you want to just do straight up? Or yeah, all right, I just wanted to double check. People that don't know, this is Leandro Melendez. I didn't give you a proper introduction. He is the Senor Performo on Twitter. He does a lot with PerfGuild, especially what I really love about Leandro. He does both English and Spanish. So he's really building the community for Spanish-speaking countries. So I'm really excited to have him. So sorry, Leandro. Like I said, people, I just want to make sure that everyone can hear and see me. And that, all right, didn't want to interrupt. I just want to make sure if we get questions, I'll throw them in as we go along.
No worries. And you can interrupt me now that the flow of the presentation that I had presented is kind of broken. We'll just play it by ear and go on with it. Sorry again, everybody. Things happen, and when you're a guinea pig, it happens.
That's right. So, sorry about
that. Yeah, I apologize. Next time it will be awesome and way better, I promise. So back to the rant that I was doing. Performance testing, getting into a straight up definition, I went ahead into dictionaries. I consulted to the Webster dictionary. And I'm going to give you a textual definition of performance testing, performance and testing one-on-one. So we start to get some understanding of what I'm trying to say. According to the Webster's dictionary, performance is the ability to perform. It talks about efficiency, how well things are being done, the manner of reacting to stimuli, weird words. It's the manner in which a mechanism responds to a given action. So performance refers as the efficiency, the behavior, and the reaction. That's what we're talking about. Now, moving on to testing. According again to Mr. Webster's dictionary, testing is a noun, is a critical examination, observation, or evaluation. It's a basis that we can use for such evaluation. and it's an ordeal or ought require as proof of conformity. So putting together these two terms, as you can see, uh, none of them mention load. None of them mention bunch of people, concurrency, or multiple interactions. Uh, nothing at all like that. System performance testing, putting together the words, is the act of examining, validating, verifying, checking the responses, the efficiency, and the measurements of our system. Again, no load, no multiple concurrency, nothing is mentioned here. If you are not convinced yet of what I'm trying to say, let's go and look into some more proof. Just think of the tools that you most frequently use to do this type of testings. Think of the names of them. It's Load Runner. It's Neo Load, Load Ninja, Web Load, Load UI, Load Impact, Load Everything. Those are tools specifically designed to load test, to generate load, to automate and be able to hit hard the system. But most of them do not speak about performance. Some of them do. This is thinking of Performance Center, Rational Performance. But these tools started being some more robust solutions that were aimed at not only generating load. Most of the tools are aimed at generating load, and few of them cover the whole spectrum that is performance testing. Why is this naming convention or differences? Probably the tool started with a different purpose or just weirdness. Some of them have peculiar names that's just the name, right? J meter probably is because it was for metering at the beginning, but I'm theorizing now. Mm-hmm. So again, load testing, going back to what I was trying to say, load testing is a subfamily of the whole genre of performance testing. I already gave an example that Joe very kindly explained of his latest performance podcast episode. I gave an example explaining this difference in between Microsoft Word and the Microsoft Office, how one is a subfamily of the other. But I thought that I could do something more out of innovation this time, bringing up something new and not reutilize examples that I have already done. So for this, let's think of performance testing as the sports practice. This sports practice is a multitude of activities designed to keep you healthy, happy, fit. So the goal for load testing is a bit different. Let's do another extrapolation. We have performance testing as sports. Let's say load testing is weightlifting, where you are just like pulling, doing some of these activities in the gym. Weightlifting can help you to be fit, can help you to be healthier, probably happy, you walking all buffed up around. But it's not the only activity, it's not the only way. And if you were doing only that, you probably wouldn't be the fittest possible, the healthiest or happiest. The sports include multiple other activities like yoga, running, CrossFit, aerobics. You can think of many of them. Even golf is considered sports, or I don't know if chess or something like that. But probably your mind is part of what you exercise, right? So to be healthy and sporty, again, you don't only do weightlifting. You probably want to have stamina. You don't only run marathons all the time because probably you won't have enough strength, and so on. You just don't just do yoga. You will be only flexible, but not strong or too much stamina. I know all these sports generate some of the other areas, but to get a better cover, you should try to exercise them all. So even in sports, even in weightlifting, going back to the analogy with performance and load testing, if you just focus on load testing and weightlifting, there's a multitude of sub practices inside of it that you can do, even in weightlifting. Like you have bicep day and back day, chest day, And don't forget leg day. That's very important. Many people with the tiny legs where they skip some of those. In load testing, we have some of those problems as well, where people skip probably baseline day, where they don't know how their application is doing with just a single user with just the minimum load. So there are multiple mixes that you can be trying to do while testing, load testing and performance testing. So another one, when you start to exercise, when you start to do sports and you go right away to weightlifting, how do you feel the next day? You feel like you are falling onto pieces, or if you just did leg day when you haven't done anything before, you'll be walking up like Bambi and your legs will be shaking. In the same matter, load testing, if you just jump right into it without having done any other preparation before, it's generally a bad practice and probably will hurt you in the same way as you won't be able to do many things a day after if you just jumped into weightlifting. So as a quick recap, performance testing doesn't require only load or specifically load testing. There are multiple other activities. Performance testing means validating, measuring, and verifying the response, efficiency, and speed of your system. That's it. Not loading, not slamming it, not trying to hit multiple people. It's part of it, but it's not all of it. And again, if you are not doing all the other possible activities that you can be doing in performance testing, you might be missing out, or you might have areas that are not covered. In the same way, there are other things that you could be doing inside of sports, inside of performance testing, such as just measurements, just monitoring, web performance with a single user. You don't have to load test your application from a web frontend. You can start measuring how good it is. And often when there are problems, you start to notice them before without having to do load tests, which often can be even a waste of resources if you try right away to just automate a bunch of stuff if your system is not behaving with a single user. So some of these practices, monitor, implement some APMs, do code analysis, check that your code at a single basis, unit test, single user, just function executions, just some database queries are doing well before trying to do some full load test in your application. And of course, I'm not saying that you should only do those first steps and not do load tests, but you should do more like a holistic approach on performance testing. On top of this, I was telling you earlier that performance testing is like the second tier in my mind, in my ideas, how I differentiate the performance related activities. Lately, I have been pushing or talking a lot about this term called that I call performance assurance. If in the general world of testing we have QA, quality assurance, why not performance assurance? How do I see the practice of performance assurance? It includes, again, another level above in the family of performance. I see that performance testing is part of it. But inside of performance assurance, we also have optimization, the code analysis, database tuning, multiple activities that, as the performance testing practice says, and performance assurance in general say, it's for you to assure that the customers have a good experience, that the system performs, that it's good, fast, and that it's up, that doesn't die here and there. There are multiple activities that you can do in this big tree or family of performance world that would start the highest performance assurance, and the family divides. Here's performance testing, and below it's load testing. And even load testing has a lower level of families like spike, endurance, general load testing, multiple types of loads that you can do. So don't, please, to finish up this rant and to give time for the questions, comments, or the discussion that you would like to do, I would like you to leave this conversation, to receive from this, really understand load testing is not the only thing that you should do. Multiple other things should be done before or tuned before you even think or try to tackle the load testing practice. You do load testing when you know that all the pieces in your system are well, that you tested them, that you just measured them, that you know single, isolated, one by one, behave the best possible. And then you dare to try to push it forward, further, I should say. So to close it again, don't just jump and try to do load tests. Understand that there's a difference. And for performance testing and performance assurance, there's a huge universe of things that you can attempt and try to do. And be careful. Don't just jump into load tests. And with that, I think I'll close my rant and open up for conversation. And let's see what people say about the madness.
Awesome. Thank you, Leandro.
That I've been saying.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we definitely need to share in the community because a lot of people get this confused big time. We actually have a lot of questions coming in. So I just thought we'd just go into the questions rather than me eating up time here. See how it goes.
Okay.
Let's see. All right, so the first one's from TC Armstrong, and they want to know, Leandro, what are your top 3 or 4 tools for performance load testing?
Oh, wow. Well, it depends a lot of at what tier, for what I was explaining, you are trying to load. Because load testing, again, you don't just jump into it. You try to measure and load by pieces. The first tier that I would say that I love to use as load testing tools, it's just programming languages, C, C++, C Sharp, Java, whatever you are using to develop your application. Right there and then you can create some threads and start stressing your modules, your methods, your classes, more or less in unit test style. You can start hitting them and see how they are behaving. Then at the service level for API, there are multiple tools that help you to load test little by little, because again, I highly recommend you to go growing baby steps. Don't just slam the big ass load test in your system. So for service API testing, again, my first step is to rely on programming languages. Your developers can help you and create some of those calls to your components. And then you can use some other tools from JMeter, LoadRunner, NeoLoad, Load UI. I mean, at a service level, the capabilities are endless. And then you scale up a little bit more. I know there are tiny levels in between, but going a little bit further on the user interface, when you are actually trying to simulate actions in your system, the options are wide, again, from JMeter, NeoLoad, Roadrunner, Gatling. Some of them are better at the lower service level, and some others are way better at the front end. And last, you have the ones that you really have to invoke a browser because you don't have any other way, or invoke a Windows or a desktop application, where it will depend a lot. LoadRunner has very good capabilities for that. And Load Ninja as well, from what I remember, can simulate a full-fledged browser. Some of Tricentis tools, I remember that as well, can help you to generate this. But again, load testing, it's a big family as well, and I cannot recommend only one tool. You should have many, like Batman, have a bunch of tools in your belt and be able to, even if you find up a shark, have the shark spray and be safe with it. Sorry if it's not a single question. I always give depends answers.
That's a hard question because there is no right tool. It's whatever tool's right for you. I always recommend doing a POC on each tool, see which one works best for your team.
Exactly. And depending on what you're trying to test, again, base level or going up to the front-end user, it depends a lot.
That's a really interesting question here. Yes or no? I would say it depends. Ogden, someone wants to know, does performance QA engineers have a better salary than Selenium automation testers?
Ooh,
From your
again,
experience.
It depends. It's a very good answer, Joe. Because in the performance world, there are again multiple roles, multiple layers or practices. You can be the unicorn full stack performer that understand many pieces, and I would say the lowest level you can be a trainee on only scripting, and probably the salary won't be great there. So, but if you tell me it depends on the levels. I cannot give a yes or no answer. It depends on your skill set. It depends on how much you understand other practices, and yeah.
I would say, maybe I'm wrong here, is it seems a lot of people are rushing into the Selenium automation field, where back in the day it was just a few people. And I think performance engineering, site reliability seems to be a big growth area for folks, which incorporates performance testing and coding. So not sure if you've seen that, but I've definitely seen a kind of a bump in like SRE type roles that do require performance skills also.
Yeah, it's a wide fan of skills, capacities, and the roles also vary. Some organization is just like the performance tester, the Selenium guy, but under that description could, as I said, could be from you're just a scripter that you're given some steps to automate, and you could be a really good scripter. I know there's a big skill set to be a serious, awesome, incredible scripter, and some others that only want to record and replay. And the pay difference as well always goes hand in hand with the skill that you have, I would say.
Yeah, and I'm also a big pusher of full stack testers. So anything that has testing in it, security testing, performance testing, I think it should be your responsibility if you're a tester. But that's just me.
No, I do agree.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
All right, next question is from W. Almarini. I'm terrible with names, by the way. What is the best strategy to test web applications that are hosted in the cloud for performance testing?
Oh, that's a wide question.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to repeat myself a little bit. First, when you have your application at the developer's machine, make sure that their code is performing. Put some metrics from the code before they can check in, before they can upload their code to the cloud, to their dev or pre-prod environments. Start measuring before. Have some bare metal in-house environments that you can put that code and test the limits, because if in your cloud you have things such as elasticity, your results can be a little bit misguiding, and you can incur, even if your cloud says like, yeah, it's running really fast, probably is consuming more resources than it should, and your cloud will be more expensive than it should. I gave an example earlier that if you don't test it before, it's like when you had a local electricity generator in your house, and then the electricity company came and provided you full electricity available all the time. If your fridge is not behaving well with your gasoline local generator, you will notice it right away, and your gasoline will run right pretty much right away, or probably won't even be able to lift a misbehaving fridge. But with the power company, you will notice until you get the bill, and that's going to be also really bad. So first test it in your local machines, bare metal implementations. Then after you upload it to the cloud, start to measure. First measure baselines, no load, just be aware, have APMs, gather as much information as you can from how your environment is doing, from dev, test, pre-prod, until you put it in prod. And then you can start load testing it little by little, but also beware, you cannot slam or it's not wise to slam cloud environments, because you get a bill from that as well. So be careful with those approaches.
Yeah, great advice. A lot of people think, oh, performance, I'll just scale to infinity, but they don't take into thought that actually the cost adds up for sure.
Yeah, as long as your budget is infinity, okay, just get it as much as you want.
All right, so Martin wants to know, what's your opinion on how to get user experience tests captured from browsers while you're putting the system under load, as all load tools don't render the content in a browser? if your front end is neither Node or React. So I think this has to do with the one user performance for like a front end for a client, capturing the legitimate client performance during a load test.
Yeah, well, client web performance, to call it in a way, what a customer will experience, I would first test it on its own. Get a customer or you yourself on the application, the web application, start using it, open your Chrome developer tools, or almost all of the browsers nowadays have some of those tools, will tell you some performance response time metrics. Where do they come from? Probably you will notice if you need a CDN or some of those things. And on the browser experience, I usually, when we are doing load tests, I recommend someone else or some GUI or browser-based, could be, I don't know, as you said, Selenium, could be UFT, some of the normal functional testing that will probably capture some of those metrics, be executed or manually done while you are doing the load test, so that you can tell how your end users will experience some of those performance problems when they happen, or degradation when you are doing a load test. But again, if the experience is bad because of load at the protocol level, most probably the end user will have the same problem. So generally, I recommend to treat them as separate items: front-end user experience, and then after the load is happening, through protocol, through other mechanisms, then manually do the browser-based user experience test. I don't see much use of trying to spin up hundreds of UFT instances, Selenium instances, when you can do that through the protocol. And of course, unless that is the only way that you can generate load, for some reason you cannot simulate a protocol through other means, that's how I recommend to approach it.
Absolutely. And I know in my previous, I have a performance podcast. I interviewed, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting his name. I'll have it in the show links after the show, but he talked about an API wrapper in JavaScript that you can use to capture the timings of the client side. You could possibly use that as you're running a load to capture that with that API, and then look at the results after to correlate what the client was saying was the response time compared to your backend server response time, for sure.
It can be one homebrew made on home, and on top, now that you mentioned, many of the APMs will inject some of that code into your solution and give you some of those metrics. So there are multiple tiers that you can gather those metrics from the browser perspective when you're doing a load test.
Very cool. So Mahmoud wants to know, which tools and technologies can we use to make load testing and stress testing easier? Like a wizard app, or using languages like Python or .NET language. Now, I just know Python has a really good locus for performance testing, and SmartBear has Load Ninja, which is browser-based. So I think that's a lot easier than going at a protocol level. Pros and cons to that approach, but what do you think?
Well, again, a single tool, the silver bullet fallacy, I highly would disregard only one tool or try to learn it in the sake of the ease of the use. Sometimes you'll be able to tackle some problems with tools that give you these scripting facilities. But in general, you must be able, again, to have a belt full of tools to be able to tackle all the problems. Now, what I usually recommend to make this as easy as possible, there's a multitude of recommendations that you could do, not tool-based, but culture, the way that your team works, and able to be able to make this as easy as possible for whoever has to create these automations for load. Again, is to start from the requirements, the developers, ask them to create some of these modules to be easily callable, to say it in a way that you can invoke them easily. You don't have to jump through fire hoops to be able to automate them. I liked a lot a definition that I think it came from Google, saying that they considered a software broken if it was not testable. So I would recommend you to focus more on make your software instrumented, easier to test, to measure, and to invoke. And if you work on that before, it doesn't matter what tool are you using. Most of them will be easy.
Awesome. So Robert has another great question here. He wants to know, how do you incorporate performance testing as companies are shifting most of their software development farther and farther left? Do you have an approach to shift left performance testing, how to do it earlier in the software development lifecycle?
Yeah, of course. It's a little on the lines of what I was saying, that performance testing and performance assurance, I would say, to shoot a bit further on what I just mentioned. I would go as far as left as possible, even when you are having your requirements meetings with the clients, with the customers on the agile development strategies, or probably even in waterfall, right? When you are gathering the requirement for the solution, to involve the performance person, the specialist, the expert, to start to say even at the level where you have the requirement and say, hey, that requirement with, I don't know, high resolution images in your catalog from the product search, from right now, I can tell you that won't scale, that won't work, that will be a problem. Why don't we refactor this solution, this proposition? The same, there are multiple possibilities where a performance engineer being present at the requirement can start clearing up some of those problems. When a requirement is defined, this performance person can say, hey, this click on a send button, how about we put it response in less than 1 second at a single user level as a done, completed measurement on our post-it, on our task, so that when the developer is doing it, he can check and make sure that he's compliant before he checks in. And that's as left as possible. You can push it. Again, as well, I recommend most of the SDKs, Visual Studio, Java Clips, and they have performance modules where you can measure your code. Many of them will tell you line by line how long they're taking, if it's consuming too much CPU. Even in debug mode in your machine, you can start measuring that and pushing it into your continuous integration. I also even recommend at times put it as a requirement for your check-in. When a developer checks in, could he himself try it? Put some like it took 1 second, I'm good with it and it looks fine. Or even make it automated. Your developer can create some quick automation that you can call afterwards and even integrate into your Jenkins, Bamboo, whatever you're using, so that when the check-in happens, the system does a quick run, gathers some measurements and says, okay, this looks good. And the next time it already has something to execute and load test the system every sprint, every new check-in or whatever. So that's really left, pushing some recommendations.
Absolutely. So really quick, we may not have talked about terms because we just assume people may know it. Someone's asking, what is a GUI view user? Really quick.
GUI view user, it's the graphical user interface, GUI. And these virtual users are, when you create one, it's not it is more or less like a robot that is interacting. How it happens at a protocol level, this robot is only sending messages and receiving them. The GUI user actually brings an actual browser, an actual window, an actual application instance that will be clicking on it. Instead of just sending messages, it will be clicking on it. Think of this as when you go at a fast food restaurant and you have the cashier and you're ordering, they have this point of sales where they are actually clicking. And when they select, let's say, a hamburger, the machine sends a message to the kitchen where the ticket will appear and say to the cook, hey, I need a hamburger. So think of a GUI user is something that is actually clicking in the point of sale. And the protocol user will be one that is sending the messages to the printer in the kitchen. Those would be the differences. Of course, if you are trying to do a GUI test, you will require to have a lot of point of sales, a lot of these cashier machines. But if you do just the protocol load testing, you just require to send a bunch of messages to the printer to stress the server or the cook in this example. So those are more or less the differences.
All right, you're making me hungry.
Some tacos, yeah?
Yeah, no, I'll see. James wants to know, how do you think about training people with no exposure to performance testing? There seems to be a wide array of tools, technologies, and general principles you have to learn, not to mention your own product details, stack, architecture. How can you prevent overwhelm, but gradually grow an organization's capability in this area?
Oh, good question.
Yeah,
well, again, as I mentioned earlier, in the world of performance testing are different roles, are different skill sets that you need for each one of those roles. If you want to just throw someone into the fire, the big blazing sun of fire that is the whole world of performance testing, that would be a bit too much, because as it's mentioned, this person will require knowledge in development and database, in networking, infrastructure, multiple areas, cloud, and many, many more. So depending on in what area do you need this person to develop, I would recommend it to generate some training oriented to that. If it's going to be a scripter, it has to mostly understand the communication in between client and server and how to simulate and forge those messages. If it's going to be, I don't know, a performance lead that has to go over the projects and implement load testing projects or general performance projects, has to be a person that understands for project management, talks management, and talks technical, that can do the liaison role. If you want someone that optimizes performance, must be someone that understands, depending where you are optimizing, they understand database, that understands networking, that understands server, caching, CDNs. So I would say it will depend on what type of role in the huge universe of performance testing are you trying to put this person. Again, I think the most straightforward and simple one that I can think of, it's load testing scripting. The most recommended one that I would do is protocol, and this person at least must understand how to invoke the services, forge the messages, and correlate that. Those, I think, would be the most baseline skills. Just for load testing, again, performance assurance, performance testing, it's huge, and you really require a big ass set of skills to cover it all.
Yeah, it's like how Mark Tomlinson always says it's a team sport. So it really needs a lot of different players for sure.
Yeah, even in the performance assurance world, if you have a very good tester, if you have a very good optimizator,
yep.
Even gurus, some of them won't have the same skills, and some others will complement each other. And not even in performance testing. I mean, when you find a bottleneck in the database, I might not be the best at database, but I need to go and look at the SWAT team for optimization in database queries, tuning, creating indexes. I don't know. It depends on what is the area. Team
Absolutely.
Sport. Very good.
But, Shankar wants to know, any thoughts on AI, machine learning, use cases, and performance in load testing that you've seen?
It depends a lot on what level are you talking about. Leveraging AI to pull performance testing, which already happens a little bit on APMs. Many APMs have AI integrations that analyze some of this. Some others are leveraging it to be able to simulate GUI or browser front-end simulations or virtual users. And on the topic of load and performance testing AI platforms, I would say it depends a lot on the platform. If it's, I don't know, from smart cars, from your Alexa or whoever, hope I'm not saying this too loud and many ones hearing this on the speaker. Alejandra, I will say it in Spanish so that I won't invoke her. but we also could measure that. How fast does it respond? And hey, what do you need? Or what is the requirement? You can automate some of those. Once the speaker captures it and understands it, it sends it as a codified web request that is sent to its own API. So it depends a lot on what is the area. AI is huge, depending on what you are trying to test. The ways, as you mentioned, the POCs, the proof of concepts, how are we going to be able to pull this off? Or just measure user by user, how it is doing. Some of those tasks for AI, it can take quite a bit to respond to you, to give you a pattern. So it's a wide answer as well.
Absolutely. So this is awesome. We still have over 137 people online. We've only dropped a few, so this is great. Questions that keep coming in. So Leandro, I'm just going to give them to you. Thank you everyone for participating in the chat and helping each other out. A lot of good discussion going on. People saying what they feel is the best automation tool. A few folks saying there's some good training that they recommend. So awesome stuff going on here. So next question here, Leandro, is... This is from Holden. He wants to know, do you have any experience using BlazeMeter? I personally have used BlazeMeter, but have no experience using LoadRunner. How would you say it compares to LoadRunner? So BlazeMeter has a lot of components. I really like Torres, but do you have any experience with BlazeMeter? And if so, how would you compare the two?
Yeah, most of the experience that I used it was uploading JMeter scripts and leveraging it. What I did with BlazeMeter was distribute some of those and generate load from multiple worldwide locations. In that area, if you are trying to do the same, I would say from LoadRunner, having your scripts recorded in VUN, gather some load generators worldwide or distribute them in the cloud. There are multiple services that provide that for LoadRunner scripts. Even Microfocus, I believe, has their own that you can just hire the load generator anywhere in the world and send your scripts there to be executed and manage them centrally, more or less like BlazeMeter does. Or there are performance center as a service platforms that you can also gather as a service, and similar to BlazeMeter, you just upload your scripts, execute them from the cloud and from multiple locations for public sites or public applications. If it's private, you need to configure your tunnels, ports, or whatever you are going to, or enable the security of the ports, right?
Absolutely. So our next question is from Gerald. For someone who has done manual testing their entire career, what do you recommend for them to do first to speed up on performance testing or to get started in performance testing?
Oh, wow. I would say first understand the performance testing principle. What I mentioned here, that performance testing is first of all measuring and evaluating the response and efficiency of your systems given certain circumstances, not only load. Understand that part, and from there you would get more knowledge on how can you simulate these circumstances, which is what gives variety to performance testing. If it's a single user, if it's multiple users, worldwide users, only one batch process, 10 batch processes happening at the same time when 1,000 users are accessing your environment all together to see what happens. But understand those first stepping stones to be able to leverage the rest. In general, for performance testing as well, I would recommend gather as much knowledge in those areas, as I said, networking, developing to generate these automations to simulate it, to simulate the load. You need some understanding of communication protocols and programming languages to put them together and forge these calls. And I would say as well, understand optimization, because in the not performance testing, but performance assurance family, optimization is important as well to understand wasting CPU cycles. Why wouldn't you do a database connection inside of a loop, a connect and disconnect? Don't gather one simple item from your records one at a time when you have billions or a few hundreds. Learn how to do big queries. So the performance optimization is also a big practice that I would recommend you to start looking at. But again, it's a wide question. If you were asking me, hey, I come from, I don't know, sports medicine, I want to get into general medicine, where would you tell me to start? Okay, learning the human body, depending on the type of medicine, probably could be veterinary, and you have to learn animal bodies. I don't know. So performance testing as well is as big as general medicine. Learn the body of the subject that you are going to be testing, the systems, the languages, and what is important in terms of performance to be tested, to be measured, to be observed. I think those would be the first steps that I would recommend, rather than just jumping into tools and slamming scripts. Again, with my rant, I'm sorry.
No, that's awesome. I'm just surprised, Leandro, how many questions we have here. This is I have an online conference, PerfGuild, that I run every year, and this is a lot more questions than I normally get asked. So this is awesome.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot of questions here. Next one is, how do you analyze load testing results with APM results when doing end-to-end load testing? Any quick tips on APM with your load testing, correlating all that info at the end of the test?
Okay. APM testing on its own, when I do load testing, again, it's gradual. I start one thread at a time per each APM call that is possible, and you measure it. Once hit it, get a return, measure if it's good. Then you can start ramping up one of them at a time together. I have the APM, I don't know, give me what's the dollar value today, the Standard & Poor, let's say. I have an APM that gives me the Standard & Poor value today, this instant. So I will call it once. It took half a second. Great. I will call it 5 times as fast as possible. It still does great. Okay. I'll put 5 threads calling it at the same time. It's like 5 people calling that API at the same time. It still does good. Okay. We can move further. So let's put 5 people threads at the same time, doing it 5 times right after. So we have 25 in total. Does it still scale? So we start move forward a little by little. Then you put together multiple different APIs. This one brings me Dow Jones. This is Standard & Poor. This is the other one, GDP. I don't know. Then we start to stress them together and we start growing it. And then you analyze the results. On all of them, you are monitoring CPU, the 4 horsemen of performance: CPU, RAM, disk, and network. How each one of them are consuming them little by little, only one at a time, 5 concurrent at a time, putting multiple together at a time. Then you analyze gradually growing, and you can even go as far as say, this is a breakpoint. This is on the API side. When you have front-end, end-to-end steps that you log in, and then you go and click to the menu and you do those, I generally recommend to do the same. You would gather results like, say, I'm a single user. I'm doing the steps from A to Z that I had to do in my automation. And I gather what are the response times, which one of them, one single user, only one time. And then you start to scale it up. One user will do it 10 times nonstop. It still scales, good. 5 users doing it only once, slam it with 5 users. It took it, great. Each one of the steps, you measure what is the response time. If you see some degradation, right there and then, depending if you are manually creating the steps, you can see browser-based, what is your experience. Always have your browser, Chrome's network, developer tools to look at the network. Then you can scale it up. I have the, create purchase order process, and here I have the create material process. I have 10 more. I put them together, one at a time, one user on each. Can they coexist? Good. Okay, now let's put all those 5 different processes, one person at a time, iterate each 5 to 10 times. they're still good, we can go a bit further. 5 people on each of them once, and it's escalating. You gather results in terms of response time, in terms of the four horsemen: CPU, RAM, time, network, disk, and then you measure, you analyze them, and all of them start to look for deviations. You right away will see some of them spiking. You will detect problem childs right away. On both of them is similar. The automations are easier for APMs and rather than for end-to-end steps. And the metrics that you will receive on both will be less complex in the APM side, more complex in the end-to-end. But again, analyze the results, look for spikes when they start to happen, when you have unwanted behaviors. And I think that's the more clear and simple analysis that you can do. When you generate a report, just do the graph. When I had one user, it was 2 seconds, 2 user, 3 seconds. And then it went sky high, or my RAM went to the bottom. I started to have paging, and analyze and correlate the results. If you do it little by little, you'll be able to catch those. But again, if you right away jump into load, you'll be trying to find the needle in a haystack or multiple haystacks at the same time. So gradual, please. Don't just jump into shameless plug. I spoke. Don't race into performance testing your application. Shameless plug for Neotis Pack presentation I did. It's the same. Don't try to race your car before you know if your tires have air, if the gas tank is full, if your suspension, if the oil, all the things that you have to measure them first separately, and then try to raise the car.
Awesome. So, Leandro, I told people this would only last an hour. We have a lot of questions, so I want to do a lightning round. People are starting to drop off because it is probably getting late for some folks. So I just want to try to see how many we can hit, and then try to wrap it up. But this has been awesome. So,
okay, wow.
Amid wants to know, can you suggest any useful performance tools for queue-based systems like Azure Function Apps or AWS Lambda using apps?
Could you repeat that again?
Yes. Can you suggest any useful performance tools for queue-based systems like Azure Function Apps or AWS Lambda using SQS?
Oh, wow. Well, again, I think it's being asked a performance tool as load generating. Again, the terms sound like it are being used interchangeably. For performance in general, I would say first step, monitor, look at probably from organic or a little bit synthetic triggering of your elements, how they behave. I always recommend APMs to be in place so that you have visibility and you know your performance. That would be like the definition, performance testing, to know how they are doing. And if you want to push them and stress them on the load test, on the other side of performance activity that you can do, it'll depend on what is type of information that you're trying to do. The queue-based, you need to be able to forge the messages, line them on the queue, send them, and then on the other side to measure how is the performance behaving. But on all of them, the key factors are performance testing, performance visibility, to know how they are doing, what is happening with them. And second, how are you going to stress them, to stimulate them? Is it organically, manually, how real life would happen, or through a tool? The tool, again, will depend on what is the configuration and nature of your module. Again, it's a wide set of possibilities.
Yep. All right, so next one is from Anil. Wants to know, is load testing one part of performance testing, as football is a sport? Kind of like your analogy with Office. Just a comment there.
I do agree. Yeah.
Do you consider performance and load testing as part of the CI/CD pipeline or something outside of it?
No. CI/CD are supposed to, per my understanding, to include all those practices. When you are doing continuous integration and continuous delivery, you need to assure that your performance is met, that you don't have degradation. So I would say it's part of it. It's very important. In the end, if you are not careful with this and your CI/CD and your users receive constantly new features, new things in your application that are not performing, if it's a commercial application, you will have customer losses. Those customers, I never go back to a page or application that misbehaves unless I have to. And usually those are the monopolies that James Pulley often talks about. And if it's an internal application that your employees are constantly getting new features, new things to work with, and they have to, the impact, if you are not careful on it, with you don't include performance testing or performance assurance as part of it, is that your company's productivity will decrease. You will have a big impact on the productivity, and your employees plainly will not want to use it. So you want them to be happy, efficient, and eager to use them all the time.
Awesome. So what's the difference between performance testing and performance engineering, in your opinion? 1 to 2 sentences.
Well, I think performance engineering goes a little bit more on the performance assurance side, where performance engineering tends to go a little bit more on optimization, more thinking how to stressing it, how to measure it, how to guarantee it. My understanding of the performance engineer role goes more into a global one. I don't like the term full stack anything, but gets closer to the full stack performer, to call it in a way, the performance engineer. And again, I think that was, what was the other part? Performer load tester?
The performance engineer compared to performance tester. Or testing, yeah, performance testing. Performance engineering versus performance testing.
Performance testing, it's only validating and verifying the performance. It's just checking it. The performance engineer has those skills, but must have many, many other ones.
Absolutely. So like I said, we're 4 minutes over time. Just a few more really quick. Difference between load testing and stress testing. Ben asked a question, but the gist of it was, are they the same thing, stress testing and load testing?
Stress testing, again, is a subfamily of load testing. I have some issues with the load testing term as well, because one of the subfamilies of load testing is called load testing again, where you are simulating a regular average day load test. I tend to call them average load test rather than just plainly load test. And stress testing is a type of load test when you are going higher than the general or average load that your system will have. So stress testing is a subfamily of the mixes, spike testing, endurance testing that you can have under the load testing umbrella.
Awesome. So Leandro, I want to respect people's time. I'll send a survey out later to see when we get to the situation when we have more questions, should I keep going? Or I know people have families, they need to eat, they need to do things. So I don't know if I should keep it really tight or not. But this has been an awesome crowd. Thank you so much. This is the first time doing this, so really appreciate it. Thank you, Leandro, for your time and joining us for the hot seat.
To everybody, if they want to still send the questions and get some answers, there are multiple channels. I know you, Joe, are going to send opportunities to send them. Yep. We also on PerfVites answer as many questions as possible. Send them to ask@perfvites.com. For me in Spanish, preguntas@perfvites.com, or through any of the channels that we are on as well. Joe, me, the PerfVites team, everybody. Please send the questions. I'm always happy to try to answer them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leandro. Really appreciate you. And I'm sure we'll see more of you. So thank you so much for joining the very first meetup for the Test Guild.
Thank you very much, everybody. And thanks for coming and having patience with my weird ways of answering questions.
That's awesome. Thanks so much.
Adios.
Bye. All right. So that was Leandro Melendez. I want to thank everyone for joining. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, R. Hunter. Thank you, Maria. I'm terrible with names, but thank you, everyone that's saying thank you. This was great. Like I said, this is the first meetup that I've done. So I really like these to be attendee-led. So any suggestions you have to make these better, I really want more of a community feel. So I like the chat. I just wish there was ways to incorporate more folks to make it feel more like a meetup. So any suggestions you have, let me know. It is really hard bringing multiple people in with cameras and video, and it gets kind of wonky. So part of the survey was I asked folks, do they recommend guild style? So I'm calling this a guild style. It's me, the guest, and you ask questions, and I ask your questions to the guest. And the other one was like a Zoom style, which I'm not a fan of, but some people are. Maybe we could combine the two, but we'll see. Thank you, Diego. Thank you, William. So one quick thing is I am releasing PerfGuild registration soon. PerfGuild is an online conference dedicated 100% to performance testing. It's a 2-day conference similar to this, but it's full 2 days where you have pre-recorded sessions and then the speaker joins us live for live Q&A. It's also like a membership site where you can join, have access to it forever, get access to our private Slack channel to get questions answered in more detail. So I'm also making it available. I usually have $197, but early bird is going to be $97 for the first few weeks. And also, if for some reason coronavirus has impacted you, your job, you've been laid off, let me know and I will comp you a free ticket. So, and all these recordings right now for the meetup will be available. I haven't worked out yet how it's going to work, but I probably will have like on TestGuild, a new link that says meetups, and all the meetups will be listed there. But everyone that registered, I made people register so I can send them an email later saying the recording is now live, and then I'll figure out how to get it to everyone else. But hopefully this has been valuable to you. I appreciate everyone really with your support, with your questions, really made this really interactive, which makes a meetup really successful. So thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate you. See you next Friday. If you want to be a speaker and you have a tip, tool, technique, or best practice, and you want to share in an informal process, it doesn't need to be an over-the-top, polished presentation. If you have something to say and you want to share it with the guild, then send me an email at joe@testguild.com, and we could bring you in for one of these meetups. So thanks so much, everyone. Appreciate it.